you can have an experience in Tuscany drinking a Chianti in the most beautiful scenery you've ever experienced, buy a case of that wine, bring it home, and go, eh. And that's not just in Tuscany. That's in Bordeaux, that's in Champagne, that's any wine region. And why is that? It's because of the fact that you were on vacation, the fact that you were relaxed, the fact that you were in an amazing location, scenery, having this incredible experience. And when you go home and drink that same wine, sitting at your counter after you've had a bad day and you're not in a good mood and maybe you're not feeling your best, and you've maybe paired it with, even if you're, most people don't even try to pair wine with food, but if you even tried to put that with a dish and it didn't work for whatever reason, you may look at that and go, this wine was not great. Like, what were we thinking? And wine has to do a lot with our sense of smell, not just our sense of taste. And sense of smell is so deeply, deeply rooted to memories. And so that's part of the total experience. And that's something that people tend to miss. And they also tend to miss that wine is nothing elevates wine like food, nothing elevates food like wine. They're meant to go together. And in fact, a friend of mine was just traveling to Romania. And as the mother of younger kids, she was asking a woman that she met on one of her tours who owned I don't know if it was a bar, or restaurant, or a shop. I think it may have been a shop. But she'd asked this owner, she said, what is the legal drinking age in your country? And she said, well, 18, unless, and she said, okay, so that goes for beer, wine, spirits, all of that. And the lady stopped and said, well, it applies to beer and it applies to spirits, but wine is an ingredient. And when she came back and told me that story, I just absolutely loved it. And she told me the story because she knows that I say something very similar, if not exactly that, which is that what most Americans misunderstand about wine is they think that wine is exactly like a cocktail or like having a beer. And it's not. It is something that is really more of an ingredient that's meant to be part of the total equation of a meal. So, for example, it doesn't have to be, it can be complicated, but it doesn't have to be complicated. One of the easiest ways that you can use wine as an ingredient in your meal is, say, for example, with a highly acidic wine. So let's look at, say, like a Pinot Grigio, a Sauvignon Blanc, really a lot of the lighter white wines that, and if you're not sure what I mean by acidity, when you take a sip of them, it makes your mouth water. And you want to just keep taking more sips. So if you're familiar with, say, a New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc, that is not only acidic, but it's also tart. So you've got acid in the wine, but also the flavors in the wine are tart, just like sucking on a sour candy. Sour candy isn't necessarily acidic in that way. It could actually even be sweet candy, but it's got tart flavors. So that's the difference between, say, like tart and acidic. So if you have an acidic wine, if you've ever watched a cooking show that has judges, one of the most common things of feedback you're always going to hear is, this dish is really good, but it either needs salt or it needs acid, right? So you'll see people a lot of times will drizzle lemon on things like fish, seafood, salads, anything that they really need to perk up. You can also kind of accomplish this with balsamic vinegar, other acidic foods. So essentially, if you will just pair your salad, your fish, your meal with a wine with some acid, you will essentially have just brought more life and more vibrancy to your meal. Without even knowing anything about this wine versus this wine, whatever, just by adding acid, you're going to accomplish livening up your meal. So a couple of things. When I started studying wine, I learned that wine is an ingredient or a part of it, the larger like algorithm of the meal. And Europeans know this, which is why other parts of the world don't have issues allowing their children to drink wine. Now, they water it down. They water it down a lot. So, 6-year-olds are not stumbling around the dining room after dinner, but young kids are cultured at a young age to understand wine and to understand that wine is an integral part of the meal. Where Americans, we had a puritanical start to our country, which means that we as a culture tend to not allow our children to drink anything really at all until, well, the legal age of 21, but usually there is a bit of a rite of passage once kids are out of high school and they're going out into the world as adults or going to college or, whatever that path is. Generally, even though we know that it's only legal once they're 21, culturally we accept that kids over 18 will be drinking. And so what we've created in that culture is we've created, at least in the past, we had very much a binge culture because we withhold. And then once kids are able to imbibe, then they go wild. Which isn't to say that kids in other countries don't go wild. I've been in Ireland when in Dublin when they won the Gaelic football title, and there were plenty of 14 and 15-year-old boys losing their lunch very close to my feet. And it was very funny because all the adults in the entire area just kind of went, step back, and just kind of let those kids do their thing and go their way. So in any case, what that does do to us, though, in the States and in Canada to some degree, is we grow up without this intimate knowledge of wine. And so we don't drink wine really until we're probably 21. And then we probably don't even drink good wine until we're like 30, 35. And when I say this in my classes, people always nod. So I know that that's a thing. So when people go out and order wine, they think, because they've seen it on TV, they think that they're supposed to be able to order the Bordeaux 1952 Pomerol, whatever. And that's just crazy. Really, no one even orders like that unless there was a specific thing that you had.